Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, August 2nd, 2024. This week, cops arrest 14 supervillains for trying to buy sex at ComicCon. England's in a panic after a stabbing spree ends in 3 dead. And we have a verdict in the Black Swan murder trial. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner on.
That James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And we're back with more True Crime This Week with me, your host, James Renner. There's the James Renner bell. Hey, I hope you caught my interview with Sean Cohen, the author of College Girl Missing, last week. I'm going to start adding interviews with authors and also people involved in these breaking true crime stories. It's bonus content for True Crime This Week. You don't have to pay anything more than you're paying already, which is hopefully nothing, because if you're paying something, it's going to the wrong person. But anyways, stay with me. Don't thank me yet. It's coming. Also, I will be off next week. I am heading out of the country to report on a true crime case. I'm super excited. I'm going to start talking about this case soon. It's a big one. It's one you've heard of, and it's the subject of a book I'm writing that'll come out in the far future. But stay tuned for more info on that. And as always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for manning the camera. Walter's just back from the Olympics, where he won the bronze in the 5-meter relay. Nice job, Walter. Let's get to the top stories. That's what you're here for. The stories that are breaking this week that you probably haven't heard of yet, but everybody's going to be talking about around the water cooler. You know. Let's dive in. Last weekend, 100,000 nerds descended on San Diego for ComicCon, the annual celebration of Star Wars and Marvel movies and Funko Pop figures. But unfortunately, the biggest news out of Comic-Con this year was not the announcement that Robert Downey Jr. will be playing the next Doctor Doom. It was the arrest of 14 fans in a well-organized human trafficking sting. The operation was conducted by the San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force, which posed as both potential Johns and as sex workers, according to NBC San Diego. 14 sex buyers were arrested and 10 victims were liberated, the youngest being 16 years old. San Diego has a program in place for victims of human trafficking that will now provide the victims with jobs and housing, according to Marissa Ugarte, the director of the Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition, which is an organization that has liberated more than 3,000 victims of human trafficking since 2005. Ugarte says the predators at Comic-Con feel emboldened by their secret identities. Quote, everyone is in disguise. It's like Halloween. They feel like they're invisible. End quote. So I guess it's true what they say. Not all heroes wear capes. Protests and violence spread across England this week following a spree killing in Southport on Monday, in which a 17-year-old boy entered a Taylor Swift-themed dance class with a knife, stabbing 3 young girls to death and injuring 8 others, according to the New York Times. In England, juveniles charged with crimes are not usually named, which is a great law in theory. Juveniles are not in complete control of their impulses, not until around age 25. I think they should be given at least some anonymity in hopes that they can be rehabilitated. Unfortunately, because the court was not naming the suspect, instigators and conspiracy theorists from the far right took to social media, claiming the perp was an illegal immigrant, which sparked protests in Southport and London that quickly led to violence against police. Demonstrators also threw rocks at a mosque and damaged a convenience store. That caused the court to break practice and name the suspect as Axel Muganwa Radubukana. I know I got that last name right. I tried so hard. Who is a citizen of the UK and born in Cardiff, Wales. The judge said he was releasing the name to stop the spread of misinformation because the suspect turns 18 next week. Now, much of the racist misinformation began with speculation posted by Nigel Farage, who is kind of like a Donald Trump wannabe in the UK. Farage suggested the crime was terrorism and that the truth is being withheld from us, he said. As always, gun lovers in America will point to this incident as evidence that getting rid of guns will not necessarily solve the violence here in the States. But if the young man who murdered those girls last week had had easy access to firearms, it's likely the other 8 girls who ended up in the hospital would have ended up in the morgue instead. A trial is set for January. Amber Waterman pleaded guilty this week to the kidnapping and killing of a 33-year-old pregnant woman from Arkansas and her unborn child in a creepy scheme to take the baby as her own, according to Law and Crime. Waterman went online and used the name Lucy to contact the mother, Ashley Bush, on Facebook. She told Bush that she could get her a job, which she needed at the time. Waterman then set up a fake job interview at a public library in Arkansas in October 2022. And there she offered Bush a work-from-home position for her pretend company. 3 days later, Waterman met Bush at a convenience store under the guise that she was going to take Bush to meet her supervisor. But then Waterman kidnapped her and drove her back to her home in Missouri, crossing state lines in the process, which makes this a federal case. Sometime between then and 5 p.m., Waterman shot and killed Bush and attempted to remove her baby with a knife. Around 5 p.m., Waterman called the police to report that a baby was not breathing. She told first responders that she had given birth to the baby in the back of her truck on the way to the hospital. Unfortunately, there was nothing the responders could do to save the baby. Federal law mandates that Waterman must serve life without parole in federal prison now. Her husband, Jamie Waterman, by the way, faces trial later this year for helping his wife cover up the crime after the fact. But even after she was sentenced in federal court, Amber Waterman's troubles are far from over. Arkansas loves the death penalty, and Benton County Prosecutor Joshua Robinson has vowed to charge her with capital murder in state court. That's something you can do. It gets around that idea of double jeopardy. If you're convicted in federal court, you can still be charged and convicted in state court. It's kind of odd, but it happens sometimes. The federal prosecutor is against the death penalty, though, and so far they have not granted the police in Arkansas any access to Waterman. Here's the thing that scares me the most about these cases, by the way, when someone kills a pregnant woman for their baby. We only hear about the times that it fails. How many out there have succeeded? That's one of those things that keeps me up at night. Hey, I've got lots more to come after the break. We got to talk about Micah Miller's family and what they were up to this week, and an incident at Penn State. Lots more to come. I'll be back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with more true crime this week. These next stories are brought to you by Bugle Boy Jeans. Are those Bugle Boy jeans you're wearing? Micah Miller's family was in court this week, and on Monday they announced that they had reached a legal settlement with her deadbeat husband and creepy Myrtle Beach pastor John Paul Miller, according to the Post and Courier. 30-year-old Micah Miller died by suicide in April, but her death led to vast conspiracy theories online before camera footage clearly showed her purchasing the gun she used to take her own life. But even though J.P. Miller didn't murder her, he was far from innocent in the whole thing. Before she died, Micah told police that she had met J.P. when she was just 10 years old, and that he had groomed her until she married him at 24. In the 6 weeks leading up to her death, Micah called the police at least 3 times, reporting that J.P. had slashed her tires and was tracking her car. The details of the settlement with Micah's family have not been made public, but they will no longer be seeking a wrongful death lawsuit. Quote, "It's time to move on to the next chapter," their attorney said. "We want to focus on the memory and beauty of Micah and everything she has represented for herself and every single person that has ever been in her situation," end quote. Based on his past behavior, something tells me that this isn't the last time we'll hear the name J.P. Miller. Former BBC anchor Hugh Edwards pleaded guilty on Wednesday to having 41 indecent images of children on his WhatsApp app, according to CNN. Edwards was chatting with an adult man on WhatsApp, and that man apparently sent him 377 sexual images, 41 of which were of children. Edwards told the court that he asked the man not to send him underage images after the man asked him if the pictures he was sending were too young. The man stopped then, but continued to send him legal porn for months. However, 41 images, that's a lot of stuff before you said enough already. So kind of a crazy case in the UK. That would be like if somebody like Dan Rather went down for that here in the States. So sad end to a long career. Back in 2017, 19-year-old Timothy Patza was an engineering student at Penn State when he and 13 other young men pledged to join the Beta Theta Pi fraternity. He and the others were subjected to dangerous hazing by frat members one night. Patza consumed at least 18 drinks within 2 hours. Well under the legal drinking age and severely intoxicated, Patza fell down the basement steps, and though he showed obvious signs of pain, he was allowed to fall asleep on the first floor couch. He was then taken to a hospital in the morning, but died from head trauma and abdominal injuries. On Tuesday, the final two defendants, 28-year-old Brendan Young and 27-year-old Daniel Casey, pleaded guilty to misdemeanors of hazing and reckless endangerment in Center County Court, according to the Associated Press. Prosecutors tried to charge them with involuntary manslaughter, but the judge denied this during preliminary hearings. Now, in the wake of Piazza's death, here's the silver lining. Penn State has banned the fraternity, and Pennsylvania has passed new laws making hazing a felony. Local reporters dubbed it the Black Swan murder trial, a ballerina accused of killing her estranged husband. The Ashley Benefield case had it all, and this week it came to an end. Benefield was convicted of manslaughter in a Florida court on Tuesday and now faces up to 30 years in prison. But is it a miscarriage of justice? Prosecutors have said Ashley murdered Douglas Benefield in order to get sole custody of their child. But the defense argued that Douglas had abused her and became physical with her again the day of the shooting, which prompted Ashley to kill him in self-defense. What we know is Douglas was 54 years old and Ashley was 24 when they met and quickly got married a few years ago. The defense brought out witnesses and evidence that showed Douglas had abused her, throwing a loaded gun at her at one point, shooting into the ceiling to quiet her, and even punching her dog. The night of the shooting, Douglas came to Ashley's house as she was packing to move out. They claim he shoved her and swiped at her before she shot him to death. The defense had argued the shooting met all the criteria for Florida's Stand Your Ground laws, but apparently that only works when the victim is black. Let's go over to weird news, shall we? Marine biologists in Brazil have found traces of cocaine in 13 sharp-nosed sharks captured offshore, according to the BBC. Experts with the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, which tested the sharks, suggest the animals could have ingested cocaine through poop, dumped off the side of ships by drug traffickers at sea. One marine toxicologist said the findings were, quote, very important and potentially worrying, end quote. Further studies are being performed to see how the cocaine has changed the shark's behavior. In related news, Steven Spielberg is currently filming Jaws 5. Let's fucking party. Over to pop culture. This week's true crime documentary that I want to recommend is called Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok Cult. Here's the write-up. After TikTok dancers join in a management company and its associated church, unsettling details about the founder and their dark realities come to light. Now, this story is about a talent manager that was engaged in a weird cult who allegedly took the earnings that these women were getting from TikTok and then pouring it into his church. A lawsuit going on right now alleges that the leader subjected the women to brainwashing, sexual abuse, and exploitation. So a very timely documentary about the TikTok age, Go check it out. The true crime book of the week is, it came out a few years ago, but it's such an interesting case. I just heard about the book. It's worth checking out. It's called Why Gary Why? And if you're super into true crime, you probably know this story, but you haven't heard it all. This is the true story of Gary Plauché, who came to kind of fame a few decades ago for murdering the man who had molested his son. They showed this footage. It's easily found online, like everything else. But what this father did was wait for the perpetrator to be extradited back home. And as he was being led through the airport, the father posed as like a journalist at a payphone. And when he got next to him, he turned around and shot the guy point blank and then surrendered to police. So here's the write-up of the book. Deputy Mike Barnett asked Gary Plauché, "Why, Gary, why?" seconds after television cameras recorded Gary shooting and killing karate instructor Jeff Doucette, who had raped, molested, and kidnapped Gary's son, Jody. Now, 35 years later, Jody Plauché answers the deputy's question on behalf of his late father and explores the story of his molestation, kidnapping, and survival. He unveils the sly tactics that child predators often use so that we can be better informed as parents of the potential signs that a person might harm their child. Through his own incredible story of using his past for good by helping others, he shares how any reader who has suffered great trauma can move on and not let the past define him or her. You have the potential to overcome negativity and redefine your own story. We don't get that story too often. It's good to hear from that source. That's the book, Why, Gary, Why? And those are the stories for this week. I'll be back in 2 weeks with more true crime this week. Try not to get into too much trouble while I'm gone. Lots more to come. And in the meantime, in the words of Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta. Get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.